Great.
It's like magic. So I went down the slide and here I am in the big room.
Hello, hello. Is that everybody?
Hello.
Now, I think we're all back now.
Okay.
I had the best breakout room.
You're welcome.
Thank you. That's perfect.
Okay, so let's go ahead and get started because I want to give as much time as possible for Stephanie to speak and then for questions and answers. Stephanie York is Vice President and in-house counsel of Hennis Communications, one of the few firms in the U.S. focused exclusively on crisis communications and crisis management. Hennis Communications serves corporations, government agencies, nonprofits, education, and healthcare institutions, as well as law firms and their clients that are on trial in the court of public opinion. I bet she's pretty busy right now. With over 25 years of experience in law and communications, Stephanie and the firm's past and present clients include the 2016 Cleveland Host Committee for the recent Republican National Convention, Avery Dennison, Lubrizol, Kent State University, Oberlin College, and the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, as well as scores of municipalities and law firms across the U.S. Better recognized as the Assistant Director of Law and spokesperson for the City of Akron and former Mayor Don Pasqualik, Stephanie serves on many local nonprofit boards, including United Way of Summit County, the Akron Symphony, Downtown Akron Kiwanis Foundation, and the Jewish Community Board of Akron. Thank you for joining us this morning, Stephanie.
Thank you. Can you give me sharing screen privileges?
I cannot, but Lil.
One moment.
Okay. Pull up my
Okay,
PowerPoint.
you should be able to now.
All right, I see it right here. This is the right, let's hope this is the right one.
We see it.
I know, I'm just hoping it's the, stop share. Let me try it one more time because I saw two of mine come up. I want to make it sure it's, I think it's this one. We'll just go for it. Now I got to move this out of the way. Okay. I'm just positioning you guys so you're not covering my, I don't know how to do that. There we go.
Just make it tiny.
There, it's gone, even
Okay.
better. Okay, so there are 110 reasons why some reporter, it's not advancing. There we go. 110 reasons why some reporter might stick a microphone in your face to talk to you about something you don't want to talk about or something you don't know anything about. Think about it. It could be an employee files a sexual harassment or discrimination suit against you, fiscal mismanagement, someone breaks into your computer, you know, a hacker, an indictment of an employee or an executive, a death of an executive. In the worst case scenario, workplace violence, the active shooter. Well, when the cameras show up, hopefully you or your client will not do this.
When you became aware of it, wait a minute, let's stop it. Don't put me to the third degree on it. I told you what the damn mistake was. I don't put me to the third degree on it. I don't have to answer that to you. I told you, goddammit, now get out of my way. When you became aware, put that camera out. Became aware of the mistake, Councilman. Hey, Councilman, oh, what are you doing? Pushing about a patient. Dr. McCluskey, please. What are you running from? Let's put that on the 6 o'clock news. This reporter is a jerk and he screws people's lives up. You don't mind if I talk to your receptionist? No, yes I do. Why? I want to answer that. I want that phone right now. Easy, easy. Hey. Hey, my coat's in there, Mr. Gilbert. You have naked women on the golf course? No. It was during a follow-up interview that Forlani asked me to leave the clubhouse, but not before he threatened my family. Is there anything else you want to say about this cell? No, not at all. Okay. Well, all right. But if your kid doesn't play on that football team, I'm going to make sure my kid does. What's that? If your kid plays on that football team, I want to make sure my kid goes one-on-one with him. We'll see what happens. What's life been like for you since you admitted you were a crook 20 months ago? federal prosecutors say you acted like the Godfather and ran a criminal enterprise out of the county building. I have no comment.
Well, when municipalities, government agencies, law firms, corporations, hospitals, universities, public and private schools, and nonprofits across the country get attacked by the media, they call for someone like me. I am a crisis communication specialist. I am not a public relations person. And let me tell you why. I'll tell you the difference. PR people are in the education business, educating you over a period of time so you like them more, you like their product more, you buy more widgets, you buy more services. PR people bring more attention to their brand. Let me tell you, when you're in the middle of a crisis, the last thing you want is more attention. And the methodologies we use at Hennis Communication are counterintuitive to the traditional practice of public relations. In fact, our elevator speech is we make your story better, we make your story shorter, we make your story go away. In fact, the best stories we have, I can't tell you because we've literally made them go away. It's a simple fact today that legal controversies are tried in the court of public opinion as often, if not more, than the court of law. It is also a fact that your company's greatest uninsured asset is its reputation. Think about it. We insure furniture that employees work on, the computers that they work with, even the buildings that they go into, and the health of our employees with health insurance, but we don't insure against a reputational attack. And because so many of the situations I mentioned previously are settled prior to an actual trial, I would suggest that managing the court of public opinion is more important. So with all that as a backdrop, to help you control the court of public opinion, we have come up with something that we call the damage control playbook. It has 6 simple concepts. If you learn all 6, you will be an excellent crisis communication specialist. And I'm going to teach them to you really fast right now. You'll be really good and you'll be able to do this job when we get off the phone. Let's hope. So rule number 1, tell the truth. Tell the truth, tell the truth, tell the truth, because the truth always comes out. It may not come out today. It may not come out tomorrow. It may not come out for 3 years when that lawsuit is over. But if it comes out and they find out you've lied, you've damaged your company's organization and your reputation going forward as well as going backwards. And the corollary to that is don't deny the obvious. If the media has this much of the story, they're going to get the rest of the story and you're not smart enough to spin your way out of that. Rule number 2, tell it first. The person who tells the story first typically determines the trajectory of the story. And rule number 3, tell it all. Tell everything you are legally, morally, and ethically able to tell. Because if you're not telling it all, someone else is telling their version of all, which may or may not be true. And all you're doing is playing catch up in the media. I'm going to give you an example of how this works. A couple years ago, I get a call from a small nonprofit. No, actually I get a call. This one is from a law director from a small city outside of Cleveland. The law director calls me up and says, Stephanie, you got to get out here right away. Went out there. It was a big HR problem. They were going to fire the person. I said, okay, here's what you're going to do. You're going to call the reporter that covers City Hall. You're going to have the reporter come in. You're going to give them the personnel file of the person you're going to fire and tell them what happened. You're going to redact what you need to redact, social security numbers, addresses, things like that. But you're going to give them the file. The law director looked at me like I was crazy. He says, we're going to do what? And I repeated, he says, I can't do that. It goes against everything I've learned in law school. In law school, we learned you do not give bad information until it's discovered, until you ask the right questions in the court of law and you are required to give the answer. I said, you were schooled in the court of law. I was schooled in the court of public opinion. We do it your way, we will end up on the front page of the Plain Dealer. You do it my way, the worst thing that happens is we end up on the front page of the paper. The best thing that happens is we're not in there at all. So the law director said, okay, I'll give it a try. Brought the reporter in, gave him the story. Next day, I went out to my paper, pulled out the Plain Dealer, nothing on A1, A2, A3, A4, B1, local section, B2, B3, B4, nothing in the paper. Day 2, nothing in the paper. Day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, day 7, day 8, day 9, it showed up. It showed up all right. It was on B11, bottom of the fold, 3 tiny paragraphs. And every time we told the story, nobody knew what we were talking about. because we told the truth, we told it all, we told it first. If you just think about the way reporters, the way they think, if it's not leaked to them by an angry ex-employee, by a disgruntled PTA mom, if they didn't have to dig it up themselves, it doesn't seem to have as much importance. Similar story, completely different outcome. I get a call from a CEO, or actually executive director of a large nonprofit. Calls me up and says, Stephanie, I have 2 employees that embezzled over $1 million. I said, okay, what do you want me to do? Because we always ask that because everybody has a different goal. What do you want me to do? He said, well, I want you to make sure that the press never finds out about this. I said, okay, how many of your employees know about this? He said, 23. Like 23, we can't keep this out of the paper. It's probably already at the paper or on its way there. Gave him similar advice. We're going to pick a reporter we know and trust, because I'll take fair over slanted any day of the week. We're going to go to that reporter. We're going to give him the 2 personnel files. Again, we'll redact what we need to redact, but we're going to give him the story. The executive director says, I can't do that. I'll look stupid. I'm like, well, how are you going to look when Carl Monday is standing, in front of your building saying your tax dollars squandered, news at 11? You're going to look horrible. He says, all right, I'm nervous, but I'll give it a try. Go to the reporter, give him the story. Next day I go out and pull out the plain dealer. And this is not like the last story. This was B1, top of the fold, giant headline. I mean, giant, only slightly smaller than Man Walks on Moon. I mean, it was a huge headline, but it was a great headline. It says, agency discovers loss, takes action. It was a good headline. It was a good story. This stuff works. Rule number 4, tell it fast. Listen, I don't have to tell you, the internet has changed everything, especially the way reporters, report things amongst themselves. I mean, who used to break news between TV and print? Well, of course, TV broke news, because if it was in the newspaper, when did it happen? By definition, it happened yesterday. So TV broke news, but nowadays reporters are told, you don't leave that city hall meeting until you tweet something. You don't leave that school board meeting until you put something up on Facebook. If it's wrong, we'll change it later. And reporters aren't just, competing with each other. They're competing with your own employees and the public who are at these meetings, who are at the situation, taking pictures and posting them online, right? And that has given rise to what we call iterative journalism. It's the biggest thing you've never heard of. In iterative journalism, I'll give you an example. Back in the day, like 7 years ago, before the internet went crazy, say I had 3 people that were part of my story. As a reporter, I would call them up and I would wait all day by my phone for them to call me back. I'd wait all day, and then I would go out to their business and try to catch them at their business. And then I'd go to their home. But I couldn't write the story and go to my editor until I had their voices in the story, because my editor would be like, you don't have a story. Nowadays, I call the 3 people up, they have 10 minutes to call me back. They don't call me back, I'm posting something on cleveland.com, ohio.com, right? The first person reads the story about an hour after it's up, because someone alerts them to it. Person calls me up and says, hey, you got this wrong, and this wrong. I'm happy to change that story as a reporter. It now has a new iteration. Then the second person calls me up and say, hey, so-and-so got to talk about it, but we didn't get to tell our side of the story. I'm like, great, tell me your side of the story. I changed the story. It has another iteration. The third person calls me up. It's been almost a whole day already, and it's had many iterations. Third person calls me up and says, I got something to say. Well, I'll change it, but I got to tell you, where do people read their news these days? They read it on their cell phones. How many times do you read a story? Do you go back and read it again? Probably never, unless you're actually in the story and then you're kind of obsessive about it. At least I am. But you probably never go back and reread it. Well, that story could have 3 or 4 or 5 more iterations after you've read the story. So I suggest if you've waited almost a day to get back to that reporter and you have some significant news to give that reporter, you ask for a new headline, a new story. Reporters are apt to do it because they get paid by the click, they get paid by the story, and it starts the process all over again. So I alluded to it, but where is the court of public opinion first convened? On social media, of course, right? So when an issue or crisis hits, you need to be prepared for the first round of social media because that's where people are going. A May 2019 Pew study reported that 67% of US adults get their news on social media. They don't get it from the paper, they don't get it from TV or radio, they get it from social media. 67% of adults. That went from 0 to 67% in about 7 years. In breaking news situations, Twitter is the go-to news outlet. A couple of years ago now, we first learned of the shooting at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, first on Twitter. And it was reported by the people who were there as it happened. This was the first tweet. Oh my God, shooting at Pulse. We hid in the bathroom and we can't find our friends. And then the bar, Pulse, tweeted, everyone get out of Pulse and keep running. And then the Orlando police went straight to Twitter to update people. Pulse shooting, the shooter inside the club is dead. Think about it for a moment. The Orlando police communicated probably the biggest news likely in its history first on Twitter. And of course, that's where our president lives. So, being on social media, first of all, if you're an organization, I highly suggest you get on social media. You do it when we say, when times are good. Get your social media following going because that is where people will go when they want news about your organization. So with that said, if you're on social media, there are some guiding principles. One, be transparent. Online audiences expect open communication. They will see through any attempt to hide or cover up the facts. Trying to be anything other than fully transparent will erode the trust you have built with your stakeholders. This goes back to tell the truth, right? Always tell the truth. The truth will set you free, people. Be responsive and fast. Social media has turned what used to be a 24-hour news cycle into a 24-second news cycle, right? So it's important to be as timely as possible with all communications. Because if you're not driving the conversation around that issue or the controversy or your crisis, someone else will, right? And they will characterize your organization a certain way, and it's really hard to get out of that once you're characterized like that. And I will talk more about that later. Couple your words with actions. Your online constituents will only be motivated to support you if they see that your organization is following through with what they say it's going to do, right? So if you say you're going to address a situation, you're going to solve a problem, you're going to look into something, for goodness sakes, make sure your organization is prepared to address the situation and that you are going to look into it and report back on social media the outcome because people are waiting for that answer. If you say you're going to do it and you don't do it, you've just damaged your reputation because then you look like you can't be trusted. You said you were going to look into it and you didn't. Boy, it's been 5-6 days. They haven't even gotten back to me. What kind of company is that, right? Be professional and be human. Okay, this is social media after all, right? This means using language that incorporates compassion, understanding, gratitude, respect, and even remorse if appropriate. Corporate speak and legalese does not win friends and supporters online. I'm sorry, do not let your attorney write your social media tweet, please, unless it's in a conversational mode that fits the social media atmosphere. So here's one of my favorite examples of being professional and being human. And this is a self-inflicted wound. The next two scenarios I'll give you were self-inflicted wounds by the actual organizations. And you'll see what I mean. A Red Cross media specialist thought she was tweeting a friend. Her tweet went out to the entire Red Cross Twitter feed. And it said, Ryan found 2 more 4-bottle packs of Dogfish Heads Midas Touch beer. When we drink, we do it right. # getting slizzard. Again, that went out to the entire Red Cross feed nationwide. The tweet was up for about an hour when the Red Cross social media director was alerted to it. She immediately took it down and apologized on Twitter, but she didn't stop there. She impressively thinking quickly put up this tweet. We've deleted the rogue tweet, but rest assured the Red Cross is sober and we've confiscated the keys. Great response, human response. A final result, Dogfish Head Beer staged a fundraiser for Red Cross. Red Cross was praised for its response, and traffic to the Red Cross site actually increased. They got more followers because of their clever response. Another example, in March a couple years ago in England, Kentucky Fried Chicken outlets had the lovely experience of running out of chicken. Can you imagine? They had a new delivery provider, logistics got screwed up, and most of their 900 locations had to shut down. Now, this is a true crisis for KFC. 900 locations had to shut down. Where did people who wanted Kentucky Fried Chicken go to voice their complaints? Social media. They went to Twitter, actually. And they even tried to get the Manchester police involved, which made them post this. Please do not contact us about the hashtag KFC crisis. It is not a police matter if your favorite eatery is not serving the menu you desire. But more importantly, what did KFC do? They did this. Yes, they did. And you know their attorney didn't approve this before they put it out, right? Right. And they also followed it up with a very well done apology in the Sunday paper, a full page apology. We're sorry. A chicken restaurant without any chicken. It's not ideal. Huge apologies to our customers, especially those who traveled out of their way to find we were closed. And endless thanks to our KFC team members and our franchise partners for working tirelessly to improve the situation. It's been a hell of a week, but we're making progress every day and more fresh chicken is being delivered by our restaurants. Thank you for bearing with us. Now, I realize you might not all be that bold, and I'm not suggesting you put something like that up and get fired, really. The point, again, though, is that social media has to be social. It has to be human to work. And when it is, it can really work to deflect criticism and end a crisis. With that said, I'm going to give you some best practices on social media. Number one, we talked about this, monitor and be prepared to respond. You have to be monitoring and responding because if you're not driving the conversation on social media, somebody else is. Don't let mistakes live on. Respond and correct misinformation in real time. So if there's a misstatement of fact or an incorrect characterization of your organization, do not let it go unchallenged. Correct the error in a straightforward, professional way, but make sure it's an error of fact and not just an opinion. And again, correct errors just once. That goes to my next one. Don't arm wrestle with trolls. Resist the urge to get caught up in exchanges with rude or obnoxious people that challenge your response, right? Don't feel the need to continue the conversation should the person, pipe up after you've put a thorough response out. Pause before hitting delete. Seriously, everyone, if it's someone just doesn't like your product or doesn't like you or whatever, I was Mayor Plisqualik's spokesperson for many, many years. I worked for the city of Akron for 23 years. Not everyone liked Mayor Plisqualik. He was a very controversial guy. There were a lot of opinions about him, but good products and good services and good entities, organizations, people will come to your rescue organically. They will. If it's an opinion, let the opinion stand. However, there are some things that could and should be deleted or hidden. And if you do that, you need to say why. And I'm talking about things that are racially motivated, profane, personal attacks, okay? But if you feel the need to remove a comment or block or hide it, you need to say, hey, this is Stephanie York, Director of Communications for Company XYZ. We removed the previous tweet because it contained profane language. Please be more courteous on our site. Because if you don't do that and it just disappears, someone has screenshotted that and they will put it up again and that becomes a story. Oh, you can't criticize that company because they'll just take it down. They'll block you. that is not the story you want. You want your platform to be respectful. That's the story. And people will understand that. Reasonable people will. Go offline to get back on track. We counsel our people many, many times, our clients, that if a person is posting critical, comments, offer to reach out to that person. Do it on social media. This is Stephanie York, Director of Communications for Company XYZ. Please call me. I will private message you my phone number, or email me so we can have a conversation. I find that when people are writing terrible things online, they are much different when you get them on a phone or have them come in for a conversation, when they're not sitting there pounding out their grievances behind, a computer sitting in their basement, right? It's much different when you get a human on the phone who's willing to listen to the complaint and try to help you out. Know who's running the site. If serious incorrect information appears on a news outlet's comment board or social media site, consider contacting the publication's online content manager. It's either the online editor, the director of digital operations, somebody like that. Request help in removing the comment. They don't want misinformation on their comment boards either. They want to put out true information, not false facts. So if you can prove to them that the information is false, they will help you to get it removed. And finally, remember your audience. Listen, social media has been, first of all, remember your audience. You're not talking to the troll or the one person, that is complaining. You're talking to everybody else, your stakeholders who are watching that conversation develop. So listen, social media has become a part of our lives. It's not going away. It's not going to become less important as time goes on. And we encourage you to make it part of your company's life. It's a great way to open up your business and your services to people so they know what you do. And it gives them a voice and an access to you and your organization. And we would argue that you'll do yourself a disservice if you try to ignore social media, but do it smartly and with your eyes wide open. Okay, off of social media for a while. Tell it to the people who matter most. So when you're dealing with conventional media, TV, newspapers, you're dealing with mass media. Mass media is good. You get to talk to a lot of people all at once. The problem with mass media, though, is mass media filters. And when you filter something, you change the way it looks, the way it tastes, the way it feels. What do I mean by that? Well, I'm a reporter. I'm coming out to do a story on you. Where did I go to school? Did I eat breakfast? What did I have for breakfast? Did I argue with my spouse that morning? The filtering is already beginning before I even come out and see you. What goes into my notes? What doesn't go into my notes? Then I go back to my office and I write the story. What goes from my notes to the story? What gets left on the cutting room floor? Then the story goes to an editor. Where did that editor go to school? Did he have a good day that day? What mood is he in? And then the editor wordsmiths it. And we all know if you just change a comma in a sentence, you can change the whole thrust of the sentence. Then the headline is written. And ask yourself, how often on any given story do you read the headline and then you read the story and there's like this fundamental disconnect? You think the story's going to be and go one way, but then you read the story and it goes a different way? Well, if that story's about you or your organization, you've got a problem. Right? Because most people do not read the paper from one end to the other or the internet from one end to the other, if that's even possible. What they do is they pick and choose stories that are highly relevant to them or that highly interest them, which leaves out about 80% of all articles. And all they do is read the headline. So if the headline is misleading, you've got a problem. And why am I telling you about this filtering stuff? Well, when we're called into a sudden crisis situation, the first thing we're thinking is how do we get your side of the story out to key audiences without being filtered at all? Live TV. You give me the choice of anything in live TV and I will take live TV. I know you're thinking, oh God, that sounds horrible. Well, in live TV, you get 10 to 12 seconds to say anything you want about that situation. You can get two really good key messages out about the situation. Right? You can't control what goes before it or what goes after it, but you can say whatever you want for 10 to 12 seconds. But chances are you're not going to get the opportunity for live TV because there's just not enough reporters going out to cover these stories, or the reporters coming out to do you know what to you, and you don't want that kind of news. So we try to think, how do you go around the news outlet and talk directly to your stakeholders? Well, let's talk a minute, back up and talk a minute about your stakeholders. Who are they? Let's take a high school, for example. High school stakeholders are their teachers. If something happens, you want your teachers to know, your students to know, your parents, the administration, the front office staff, custodians, vendors to the school, people that live within a 1 mile radius of the school, local, state, and federal regulations to the school, and the list goes on and on. And for every organization out there, whether you're a CPA firm, a law firm, or a tattoo parlor, you know, a small mom and pop shop, every organization has between 10 and 20 distinct stakeholders. So we think, how do you go around the media filter and talk directly to your stakeholders? Well, you can send mail. You can send a letter to them explaining the situation. You can have personal meetings one-on-one with some of your employees. You could pick up the phone and call them. You could do a robocall if you're big enough. You could have town hall employee meetings. Old-fashioned, I said letters, email. It's a great way to reach many of your customers, employees, and constituents. And of course, digital communications, particularly social media. People who care about you and your organization will go to your website for information. They will go to your Facebook page, your Twitter feed, and your Instagram page. They will go there to find out what you're saying about the situation. And what we find, if we get your words to your stakeholders and fast, they may not believe what they read on the blogs in the afternoon, what they see on the news at 6 and 11, or what they read in the newspaper the next day. Your most important audiences, if they hear from you first, are much more likely to believe you. It doesn't take much to discredit the media these days without even throwing a punch. Rule number 6, the media's job, and I hate to tell you this one, it is not to inform or educate. It is not to inform or educate. It goes against everything you've learned in school civics class, right? Reporters are supposed to gather facts, pick them up, and plop them down in the paper, right? Wrong. If they did that, it would be a report. And reports are boring. They're dreadfully boring. Nobody wants to read a report at 6 o'clock in the morning with their bagel and coffee. I don't want to read a report ever. They're tedious. They're boring. I just don't ever want to read a report. The fundamental job of a reporter is to tell stories. And how do they do that? They take the facts you give them, the facts you know to be true. You've seen with your eyes, you heard with your ears, right? And they throw some out. And they go and they gather more facts that may or may not be true. They add them to the story. Then they rearrange the order in a way that may or may not make sense. And they take what's left and they shake them up and they jam them into what we call story frameworks. These stories have names and they have characters that inhabit each framework. For example, military and sports stories are told in the hero framework. There are stories of honor, stories of dishonor, the good mother that becomes a bad mother, the rich man that becomes a poor man, the Bernie Madoff stories. Business features. You can't bring that product to market. You bring it anyway, and it's hugely successful. Reporters love to write those stories. People love to read them. Stories of redemption, stories of conflict. Horse race stories have no horses. What they have are winners and losers, and that's how political stories are told. Who's up in Ohio? Who's down in Michigan? Who's winning Florida? But what you're going to be hit with, when someone points the finger at you and says, you should have known that that bus driver had a previous DUI. You should have known that that product was dangerous for little kids. You should have known that your financial officer left previous work employment under suspicious circumstances. What you're going to get hit with is what we have defined as the 3V framework. The villain who does something to the victim, and the vindicator that rides to the rescue. Now, the problem with the 3V framework, and it's twofold, it's triggered the second the accusation is made, whether you heard it or not. And the only thing that matters is the speed of your response. Let me give you an example of that. You get a call at 8 in the morning. It's the New York Times saying they're doing a story about allegation of sexual discrimination in your workplace. It could be a story about anything, people, and it could be the plain dealer. But this one happens to be the New York Times doing a significant story. Now, if you're like any other employee, you will call your manager, your boss, right? And the manager will call and leave a message for the boss. Because you know what flows downhill? Calls from the New York Times, they flow uphill, right? And the boss gets the message, you know, a couple hours later, because he's been in meetings, picks it up and says, oh my gosh, and calls his attorney, because attorneys always get involved. We have superpowers, right? And it's lunchtime. You leave a message for the attorney. He goes to lunch. He's at a meeting after that. He picks up the call around 2, 3 o'clock, calls you back and says, listen, do not call the reporter back. We have to figure out what this is about. Sage advice. You don't want to cold call the reporter back. Figure out what it's about and then call him back. They figure out what it's about. The attorney calls the boss back and says, you do not call this reporter back. I will call the reporter back. Well, let me tell you, no matter how many degrees that lawyer has from Harvard, Yale, Case, Akron Law School, it doesn't matter. That attorney is about to drive the truck off the cliff, and let me tell you why. Call was made at 8 a.m. It's being returned at 4 p.m. by an attorney. The media, the reporter now knows he has a story, and he will not let go. He will just dig in deeper. And then the attorney makes things worse by saying no comment. Right? Well, what do you think about when you hear no comment? Guilty, guilty, guilty. Listen, there may be things you cannot talk about, right? There's privacy laws, HIPAA laws. There's personnel issues that you might not be able to get into, student privacy laws, right? There may be legitimate legal concerns. So yes, confer with your attorney, but remember there's always something you can say. Listen, we can't talk about a specific incident of sexual or allegation of sexual harassment or discrimination. But what we can tell you is when we get such an accusation, this is how our company handles it. You got a good quote in the paper now, right? And it doesn't say no comment. No comment cannot be an option. And it's much the same on social media. If you're on Facebook and Twitter and there's a news story or somebody, your company's being vilified, or your CEO or someone is being vilified and they're silent, don't you wonder where they are? Why they aren't defending themselves? At least you're allowing everyone else to define your role in the situation and perhaps forever cement how people will remember you. Meanwhile, it's on the blogs, TV news, newspapers, internet that you are the villain, but let's assume you're not the villain. Maybe you're the vindicator or even the victim. The real insidious problem with the 3V framework is that if the facts don't fit the frame, people discard the facts. In other words, once everyone thinks you're the villain, all you do is reinforce that role. And you can't talk your way out of the villain once you're the villain. You have to act your way out of it. Answer your own phone calls. Make eye contact when you're talking with people. Speak for yourself, not through your attorney. And know how to say, I'm sorry, without taking legal responsibility for something. So I'm often asked, what if you are the villain? Bad things happen to good people. People make mistakes. They make bad judgments. Well, I told you the 3 V's. Now I'm going to tell you the 3 F's. If you F up, fess up, and fix up. In other words, admit what happened and pivot immediately over to what you're going to do so it doesn't happen again. You go quickly from being the villain to being the vindicator in the same news story. And it's okay if you don't know exactly what you're going to do to fix it yet, right? Because sometimes it's still under investigation. You could say, listen, this happened. We know we need to fix it. We're not going to come back to market with a product, or that person's not going to come back into that position until we know exactly what went on and how we're going to fix it so it doesn't happen again. And we will let you know. Bottom line, most reporters today are serving 2 masters. I think they really do want to get to the truth, but they also want to be first. And if you don't decide what character you want to play in the story, they will assign you a character, right? The They will assign you a character and that will be who you play. I know we're really towards the end, so I'm going to give you this quick video. I showed you the ambush video previously, the people getting ambushed. I want to show you how to get out of that situation because I can't leave you hanging.
Can you make the volume louder on the video?
Let me,
Because the last one was difficult to hear.
yeah, this one is louder because he's naturally loud.
Thank you.
It also helps if you take out your headphones, Stephanie.
Every PR person on the face of the earth, your client comes up to you and asks, how can you guarantee that I can get on TV? Well, I managed TV newsrooms for 20 years, and here are a few techniques that I've seen work every time. You can run away from the reporter as fast as you can. Grab the videographer's camera and wrestle with it. You can jump in your car and floor it. You can slam the door in the reporter's face. We usually see this kind of behavior when people are ambushed by a TV reporter. I can tell you that nothing made me more gleeful in a newsroom than a reporter skipping into the newsroom with an ear-to-ear grin telling me, you got to see this one. And then they play back video of him chasing some poor sap into a building or around a car. Usually the whole newsroom winds up gathered around to watch. So guess what video is edited into each and every promotional spot that day? And guess what video is edited into each and every follow-up story that gets done? You know, it just doesn't have to be this way. The best way to handle an ambush interview, don't give the reporter anything they can use. If you're getting in your car and suddenly a microphone is stuck in your face and a red-faced reporter is shouting provocative questions at you, take a deep breath and as politely and calmly as you can, get out of your car and say, I will be glad to talk about this. I can't do it right now, but I can meet you in 15 minutes. And if the reporter insists, repeat it again. Is that exciting TV? Of course not. The reporter probably won't use it in their story. So keep your cool. Buy yourself a little time to prepare. Do the interview in a neutral location. If you try it, you may turn an ambush interview into an opportunity for you to deliver meaningful messages.
So finally, we have a newsletter that we send out twice a month. It has best practice link on dealing with crisis communications, what people did right, what they did wrong, how we do it different, what the trends are. We don't sell anything. The only thing we have in there about us really is when we're speaking next. If you want to be on that, we have 8,500 subscribers that a lot of open rate. It's pretty encouraging. Send an email to hennis@crisiscommunication.com. It's on your screen and just type subscribe in the subject line. You can easily unsubscribe, but I think you will really like the newsletter that comes out. And now I am happy to take any questions. I know there's not much time, but I'll hang on for whoever has questions.
Not sure if it's okay or not, but I have an issue going on right now within the company, and I wanted to ask your advice. Having to do, all of our clients are all real estate agents. And we have one agent that is a partner because we have partner companies within our company. And she's a bit of a bully and she's very demanding. And I've had people quit the company because they had to deal with her. And we're back at that again, not sure how to handle it because she's my client and I need to have a conversation with her.
Yeah, so she's a client, you said, or someone that works?
No, she's a client. She's a real estate agent that does a lot of business, and yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, you have to have that difficult conversation with her.
What do you say? Because she's going to not respond well.
Well, you have to determine whether losing, how much of a detriment is she? You have to do this pro-con list. How much of a detriment is she on your?
To me, I don't want to lose her, but I'm, got another email yesterday from one of our support staff and saying, we have to have a conversation because she can no longer take it. Everybody's bending over backwards to make her happy. She sends emails in capital letters. She calls and screams at everybody. I got to manage her.
Yeah. It sounds like it doesn't sound like a crisis situation. Seriously, where, you know, but you do need to communicate with your internal staff about how you're going to handle this
I
and
did.
what you're going to do. And maybe she has limited contact with other people in the organization.
That was my thought. And I
Only
wanted to see
goes,
if-
yeah,
right.
and only goes through you. You know, and everything has to be handled through, I mean, because you're the one that's profiting from having that relationship and everyone else is suffering. So the best you can do is limit their suffering and tell them, this is how I'm going to handle it. If you get calls from her, please, you know, or messages, please forward them on to me and let me handle it. And let them know that you will take on that responsibility because you want to keep her as a client. If you don't want to keep her, yeah.
Well, we all profit from it, you know.
Right.
The company profits. So,
Right.
yeah. And my boss winds up talking to her constantly, but now it's like she's not manageable.
Right. Right. And if it gets just too bad, you know what,
I
sometimes
know.
you gotta cut
There
your
were many
losses.
times that he said he wanted to send her back her money and give her back her shares, and I said no, but we'll fix it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.
So I have a question.
Sure.
I'm trying to remember the exact conversation, but this just came up the other day with someone, and we were talking about something, and they were talking about, I'll just go to social media and put it out there, and it was about another company. It wasn't about me, but I always personally worry about anyone putting anything out there. How much do you worry about someone's threat about, I'm going to put it on social media? Do you
It can be
bow
very
down to them
damaging.
because you're afraid of it?
No, because I mean, you couldn't function. I mean, social media is part of our lives. People are going to go to social media. They may not even warn you. They may just put it out there. They can threaten all they want, but you just need to have a response. We call it a media standby statement or a social media standby statement. Have something ready to address the issue. So when they put something out there, you immediately have a response. So people will see their message and your response. And then don't go back and keep, arguing with the person. Again, you just want to make sure your response is there so people know. And if you need to direct them to your website for the correct information, I would do that. Sometimes if it's a big issue, we have a Q&A that we put out for people that we post on their website and say, we disagree with what this person's saying. We'd like you to see, we have some frequently asked questions or some, a Q&A on our website that can answer your questions about this issue. Please go to, and then give them the link. So you want them to start coming to you for information. So you're their trusted source, not
Right.
this poster.
I assume it's better to have a response using like we and our rather than I.
Absolutely. I think so. And it depends on the situation. I mean, if it's a personal thing, then, you may need to say I, but yeah, I would talk for the organization.
Right.
Yep.
Can I just chime in too? So I do marketing for the chamber, but I also have my own marketing agency. And so every time I work with clients, especially ones whose businesses are B2C, not B2B, I always tell them, don't delete negative comments on your social media, right? And that was something that you had mentioned. I had a chef that I worked with at a restaurant in Bedford, and prior to engaging with my agency, he used to go in and delete negative reviews in the sites that allowed him to do that. And I was like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I was like, nobody expects you to be perfect. You're going to get negative reviews. I think that what people take away much more than the negative reviews is how you respond to them, right?
Absolutely.
And once he started responding to those, not as a pushover, but in a polite, professional manner, people started commenting on his responses and saying, oh, wow, it's so great to see a chef who actually cares what people have to say. And
I'm sorry you had a bad experience. I would really like to make it better. Tell me how we can improve. And then, there's lots of appropriate responses. And you let it go, it'll snowball, and then, and if you remove it, you're the villain for removing it.
And like you said before, everybody's going to screenshot that. Somebody is going to have a screenshot of the negative review before you have a chance to remove it. And then they will screenshot the fact that you removed it. And then it becomes, what is this company trying to hide? Why can't they take criticism?
And if you're good, people will organically come to your rescue.
Absolutely.
They will say, I actually had a good experience. I'm sorry, you know, that happened to you, but I had a great meal there,
Right.
you know. Well, if you guys have questions that you don't want to bring up here and you want to email me, feel free to email me. I'm at york@crisiscommunications.com, just like the Hennis at crisiscommunications.com, but York, my last name. I'm
We're
happy.
actually going to send out a follow-up email, which is what we do with all of our events. And so we will send you an email that has everybody's contact information that was registered for this event. So
Great.
they will have yours, Stephanie, and you will have theirs as well.
Great.
And there will be a link in there to a survey about this event. So you guys can give us
Ooh.
feedback so we can continue improving our events for everyone. And there will also be information about upcoming events. We have some good stuff coming up. So Heather, if you want to unmute, or I can just thank Stephanie on your behalf. We thank you on the behalf of the chamber for taking part in this. It was a very timely conversation, I think. Got some great information out of it. And like I said, everyone will have your contact info. So if anyone has any follow-up questions, they can reach out to you directly.
Awesome. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you.
I
Thank you very
appreciate
much. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
It was worth getting up.
Good. Glad to hear that.
I loved it. Thank you
Great.
very much.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Yeah. Well, everybody have a great day, I guess.
You too.
Thank you.